People think women stopped chasing men because their standards got too high, but the truth is much more uncomfortable. Women didn't become harder to please. Men became too expensive emotionally. Modern women ran the numbers, and for the first time in history, the return on investment in relationships came back negative. They didn't walk away because they're incapable of love. They walked away because the emotional cost skyrocketed while the benefits collapsed. Once you understand that math, you'll see why women now protect their peace, rather than gamble their sanity on relationships that drain more than they give. Look around at the women who are single by choice. They're not desperate. They're not complaining. They're not endlessly swiping on dating apps. They carry a level of peace that older generations never had, and that's not an accident. It's strategy. Your grandmother chased relationships because she had to. Survival and social acceptance depended on it. But today's woman has something revolutionary: choice. Real choice, backed by her own income, career, stability, and support network. So when she considers dating, she runs a cost-benefit analysis, and every variable points to the same conclusion. The emotional investment required simply isn't worth the return. Women have watched too much to pretend otherwise. They've seen mothers give everything to marriages that ended in heartbreak. They've watched friends drain themselves dry as unpaid therapists, managers, and emotional caretakers. They've lived the invisible labor that keeps relationships together, managing his moods, remembering everything for him, absorbing his stress. And they see that men rarely do the same in return. The first brutal reason women aren't chasing men anymore is financial independence changed everything. When women earned their own money, owned their own homes, and built their own retirement funds, the entire foundation of traditional relationships cracked. She doesn't need someone to pay her bills. She doesn't need someone to provide security. She doesn't need someone to take care of her financially. What she needs is someone who adds genuine value to her already complete life. And that's become incredibly rare. I know women who make six figures, own beautiful homes, travel the world, and have rich social lives. These women look at the dating pool and ask themselves a simple question: what exactly would a relationship add to this life I've built? And the answer, too often, is complications, compromises, and emotional labor without equivalent return. The second reason cuts deeper than finances. Women have become exhausted by the emotional labor that modern relationships require. Every interaction feels like a performance where she has to manage not just her own feelings, but his ego, his insecurities, his need for validation. She's tired of being the emotional GPS for grown men who can't navigate their own feelings. I counseled a woman recently who described dating like being a free therapy session. Every man she met wanted to unload his problems, his fears about the future, his struggles with confidence. But when she tried to share her own challenges, the conversation somehow always circled back to him. She realized she was providing emotional support that he couldn't get from his male friends because he'd never learned how to build those deeper connections. The third reason is safety. And it's more complex than physical danger. Yes, women worry about meeting strangers from dating apps. Yes, they're concerned about men who might become aggressive when rejected. But there's another type of safety that's equally important: emotional safety. The safety to be herself without judgment, without having to constantly perform femininity, without walking on eggshells around someone's fragile masculinity. Modern women have watched what happens to their friends who date men who can't handle a woman's success. The subtle undermining when she gets promoted. The jokes about her ambition. The expectation that she should dim her light to make him feel better about himself. They've decided that kind of emotional danger isn't worth the risk. The fourth reason involves something nobody wants to discuss openly. The quality of available men has declined dramatically. Not their potential, not their worth as human beings, but their readiness for adult relationships. Women are meeting men in their 30s who still live like college students. Men who expect her to do their laundry, cook their meals, and organize their lives while they focus on video games and fantasy sports. She's looking for a partner, an equal, someone who brings the same level of emotional maturity and life skills that she's developed. Instead, she's finding men who want a mother figure with benefits. Men who've never learned to cook for themselves, manage their own schedules, or handle conflict without shutting down or exploding. The fifth reason strikes at the heart of modern dating culture. Social media and dating apps have created an environment where women feel like products being evaluated rather than human beings being appreciated. She swipes through profiles where men list requirements like she's applying for a job. Must be fit, must be feminine, must not have baggage, must be low maintenance. Meanwhile, these same men bring nothing equivalent to the table. She's tired of being rated on her appearance while her intelligence, her accomplishments, her character are treated as secondary considerations. She's exhausted by men who swipe right based on photos but can't hold a meaningful conversation. She's done with the shopping mentality that treats relationships like Amazon purchases, where you can always return something if it doesn't meet expectations. The sixth reason reveals a fundamental shift in how women view their time and energy. Time has become her most valuable resource, more precious than money, more important than social approval. She's learned that every hour spent on disappointing dates, every weekend wasted on men who don't appreciate her, every emotional investment in someone who isn't ready for what she offers is time she can't get back. Modern women have rich, full lives. They have careers they're passionate about, friendships that nourish them, hobbies that fulfill them, goals they're working toward. The opportunity cost of dating men who subtract rather than add value to this life has become too high. Why would she spend her Saturday night listening to someone complain about his ex when she could be reading, traveling, creating, or simply enjoying her own company? The seventh reason cuts to the core of modern relationship dynamics. Women have realized that most men want the benefits of traditional masculinity without the responsibilities, while expecting women to abandon the benefits of femininity while keeping all the responsibilities. He wants her to be independent enough to pay her own bills, but dependent enough to need him. He wants her to be confident enough to handle rejection, but insecure enough to be grateful for his attention. This contradictory set of expectations has created an impossible situation where women can't win. If she's too independent, she's intimidating. If she shows any vulnerability, she's needy. If she has standards, she's picky. If she doesn't, she lacks self-respect. Women have stopped trying to solve this puzzle and started asking why they should play a game with constantly changing rules designed to make them lose. The eighth reason exposes something that makes everyone uncomfortable but needs to be said. Women have become hyper-aware of the emotional terrorism that disguises itself as love. They've watched their friends get trapped in relationships where his moods dictate the entire household's emotional climate, where his bad day becomes everyone's problem, where his need for control masquerades as protection and care. She's tired of men who use their emotions as weapons. The silent treatment when she doesn't comply with his wishes. The explosive anger when she sets boundaries. The guilt trips when she wants to spend time with friends. The manipulation disguised as vulnerability, where he shares his trauma not to build intimacy, but to make her feel responsible for fixing him. Women have learned to recognize these patterns early. They see the red flags that previous generations ignored or excused. The way he talks about his ex-girlfriends reveals how he'll eventually talk about her. The way he treats service workers shows his true character. The way he responds to the word no tells her everything she needs to know about their future together. The ninth reason strikes at something deeper than individual behavior. It's about the fundamental mismatch between what women have evolved into and what men still expect them to be. Modern women have developed emotional intelligence, communication skills, and self-awareness through years of therapy, self-help books, personal development, and honest conversations with other women. She's done the work on herself. She's identified her patterns, healed her wounds, learned her triggers, and developed healthy coping mechanisms. She expects the same level of emotional sophistication from a partner. Instead, She meets men who think emotions are weakness, who've never been to therapy, who blame all their relationship problems on their exes, who expect her to accept them exactly as they are, while demanding that she change to meet their needs. The emotional labor gap has become a chasm. She's operating at a graduate level of emotional intelligence while he's still in elementary school. She's ready for deep conversations about feelings, future goals, and personal growth. He's still making jokes to avoid any topic that requires vulnerability or introspection. This creates a fundamental incompatibility that no amount of attraction or chemistry can overcome. She finds herself constantly translating her needs into language he can understand, dumbing down her emotional vocabulary, pretending to be less aware than she is just to avoid making him feel inadequate. The exhaustion of this performance has become unbearable. The 10th and most brutal reason why women have stopped chasing men cuts to the bone of modern relationships. They've realized that most men don't actually like women. They like the idea of women, the fantasy of women, the services that women provide. But they don't genuinely enjoy female company, female conversation, female perspectives, or female energy. Listen to how men talk about women when they think no women are listening. The complaints, the resentment, the way they describe basic relationship needs as manipulation or demands. Watch how they interact with women they're not trying to sleep with. Notice the dismissive tone, the interrupted conversations, the way they tune out when women speak about their interests or experiences. Women have become painfully aware that many men see them as a different species rather than individual human beings with complex inner lives. They're tired of being reduced to stereotypes, tired of having their emotions dismissed as irrational, tired of being treated like they're inherently difficult rather than legitimately responding to legitimate problems. She's noticed that he lights up when talking about his hobbies, his career, his interests. But when she shares her passions with the same enthusiasm, his eyes glaze over. He asks surface-level questions and changes the subject back to himself. He remembers every detail about his fantasy football league, but forgets important conversations about her life. This realization has been devastating for many women. The understanding that the person claiming to love them doesn't actually enjoy their company unless it serves his needs. That he tolerates her personality rather than celebrating it. That he sees her emotional needs as burdens rather than opportunities for deeper connection. Women have stopped chasing because they've learned something revolutionary. They've discovered that being alone feels infinitely better than being with someone who makes them feel invisible. The loneliness of singlehood is clean, honest, and temporary. The loneliness of being misunderstood in a relationship is suffocating, crazy-making, and seemingly permanent. The modern woman has tasted what it feels like to be truly seen and appreciated by friends, colleagues, and family members who value her mind, her humor, her perspectives, and her contributions. She knows the difference between genuine appreciation and performative interest designed to get something from her. She's experienced what it feels like to be around people who are genuinely curious about her thoughts, who remember what she tells them, who support her dreams without feeling threatened by her success. Once you've experienced that level of authentic connection, it becomes impossible to settle for the hollow performance that passes for love in so many modern relationships. This is why she's not desperately searching anymore. This is why she's not compromising her standards or settling for less than she deserves. This is why she's walking away from situations that previous generations of women would have tried to fix, manage, or endure. She's choosing herself not because she's selfish, but because she's finally learned what genuine love and appreciation feel like. And she's not willing to accept anything less than that standard, even if it means being alone. Women have discovered something that terrifies everyone around them. They've learned to distinguish between genuine loneliness and the manufactured loneliness that society uses to pressure them into settling. Real loneliness is temporary, manageable, and often productive. It drives personal growth, creative projects, and meaningful friendships. The fake loneliness, that family members and married friends try to convince her she's experiencing is actually just social pressure disguised as concern. She's tired of hearing that her biological clock is ticking when she's never felt more alive or purposeful. She's exhausted by relatives asking when she's going to give them grandchildren, as if her reproductive choices exist solely to fulfill other people's expectations. She's done with friends in mediocre marriages telling her that being alone is worse than being with the wrong person, especially when she watches these same friends complain constantly about their partners. The pressure campaign has become relentless and transparent. Every family gathering includes interrogations about her dating life. Every wedding invitation feels like a reminder that she's failing to follow the prescribed timeline. Every baby announcement from friends triggers well-meaning but invasive questions about when she'll settle down and start a family. But something remarkable has happened. Instead of caving to this pressure, women have started questioning why everyone else seems so invested in her romantic status. They've realized that much of this concern isn't actually about her happiness, but about other people's discomfort with her choices threatening their worldview. Married women need her to be miserable and searching because her contentment suggests that their sacrifices might not have been necessary. Men need her to be desperately seeking because her independence challenges the narrative that women need them for completion. Society needs her to be unfulfilled because her satisfaction disrupts the economic and social systems built on women's emotional labor and financial dependence. So here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to acknowledge. Women haven't stopped chasing men because they're broken, damaged, or too demanding. They stopped because they finally learned their worth. They calculated what they bring to relationships versus what they typically receive in return, and the math doesn't work. Until men start showing up as equals, as partners, as emotionally intelligent adults who genuinely appreciate women instead of tolerating them, this trend will continue. And honestly, women are perfectly fine with that. They're not pausing their lives waiting for men to catch up emotionally. They're not putting their joy on hold in hopes of finding someone who understands reciprocity. They're not sacrificing their peace to prove they're worthy of love that should have been freely given in the first place. The truth is simple. Women have evolved faster than the dating culture around them. Their emotional awareness, financial independence, psychological resilience, and ability to self-reflect have outpaced the expectations placed on them. They are no longer confined by the old narratives that told them their value depended on their relationship status. Now, they know their value comes from within, from the lives they've built, from the goals they pursue, from the friendships they nurture, from the peace they protect. A relationship is no longer a requirement for survival or social acceptance. It is an optional enhancement to a life already full of meaning and purpose. And here's the part that many people struggle with. Women today are no longer willing to compromise their emotional well-being for the possibility of companionship. They refuse to enter relationships that drain them, diminish them, or derail the progress they've made. They're not impressed by bare minimum effort. They're not charmed by inconsistent affection. They're not seduced by potential. They want partnership, not parenting. Reciprocity, not rescue missions. Emotional safety, not emotional turbulence. They've learned that peace is priceless. Stability is priceless. Self-respect is priceless. And any relationship that endangers those things is too expensive, no matter how attractive the man or how strong the initial chemistry. This isn't about bitterness. It isn't about giving up on love. This is about clarity, growth, evolution. Women have finally realized that love should not require self-abandonment. It should not require chronic overgiving. It should not require shrinking themselves to fit into someone else's emotional limitations. They are no longer auditioning for roles in men's lives. They are no longer performing for validation. They are no longer settling for men who confuse emotional labor with love. Women today know who they are, what they bring, and what they deserve. They know that solitude is better than suffering. They know that their lives are full, rich, and meaningful with or without a man. They know that a relationship is only worth pursuing if it enhances, not diminishes, their well being. So when people ask why women aren't chasing men in 2025, the answer is both simple and profound. Because the price is too high, the reward is too low, and the peace they've found is far too valuable to gamble. Women aren't rejecting men. They're rejecting imbalance. They're rejecting exhaustion. They're rejecting relationships that require them to abandon themselves. And until the dating culture evolves, until men learn to meet women where they are emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, this shift will only accelerate. Women haven't given up on love. They've given up on settling. They haven't rejected partnership. They've rejected emotional poverty. They haven't stopped caring. They've stopped carrying what was never theirs to hold. This is the new reality of dating in 2025. Women choose peace. Women choose self-respect. Women choose themselves. And that choice, it isn't just powerful, it's revolutionary.